We've talked about the sweeping impact of Governor Brown's proposed new budget cuts. Nobody is safe. Everybody's going to feel the cuts, including the state's courts. They are already cut to the bone, but now more cuts are coming, and some say they threaten the fundamental right to justice for all Californians and even impact the basic principles of democracy. All courts would be hurt, from criminal to small claims, all the way up to the state Supreme Court. California Supreme Court Chief Justice Cantil-Sakauye joins me tonight via Skype to talk about the impact on our courts. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us.
What a pleasure it is. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about the impacts on this. We know that the courts have already been deeply cut, but now these proposed additional cuts. How bad are things now, and how bad could they get if these cuts go through?
Things are very bad now. We are currently grappling with a $653 million cut to our judicial branch. In terms of percentage, that's 24% that the branch has been cut over the last several years. And so in this fiscal year, 11-12, we're grappling to deal with that $653 million. We just learned from the governor's May revise several days ago that now we're being cut an additional $544 million. And this is on top of 5 years of cuts, if you include next fiscal year. And mind you, we're only 2.4% of the entire state of California general fund. That's 2.4% to provide justice to 38 million Californians.
Tell me a little bit about, we'll walk through this. Let's start with the criminal courts, for example. What kind of an impact does this have, and what does this mean in a criminal court?
What this means in a criminal courts is congestion and delay, delay, delay. What this means is we are having to forced to furlough workers, lay off court employees, reduce clerks' hours, close courts, close courtrooms. And so trial court judges are doing as much as they possibly can, very full days with limited staff. Staff finds themselves doing 2 and 3 jobs that they had never done before, trying to process the criminal caseload. The criminal caseload is less affected in the sense that we have constitutional and statutory obligations to proceed on those cases on a timely basis. However, with reduction in staff, what we're seeing is these cases are piling up. For those defendants who are out of custody or waiving time, those cases are getting to court longer and longer with more of a delay because our hands are full with those who are in custody and won't, as we say in legal parlance, waive time.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about what happens on the civil courts. Those are also impacted by this. Tell me what you see happening there.
Civil cases are far more aggravated in this particular instance. And that's because when courts have to reduce funds, we look first to the civil caseload because those are not constitutionally protected. And so we're seeing our closures of courtrooms and our closures of courthouses are affecting the civil caseload. When we look at reduced clerks' hours and reduced hours of filing, we're talking about civil. When we cut staff, we're talking about civil staff. And when I say civil, I mean the broad spectrum from family law, from dependency to also small claims, also traffic and situations like that. So where most people go to get the business of their life taken care of.
So are you talking about if you've got a business lawsuit or you face foreclosure and you want to fight for your rights, or you've got a problem with your employer? Let's say that there's a lawsuit on something, there's an injury on the job. All of those kinds of things would be civil courts, right?
That's absolutely right. You lose your job, you are ripped off by business, your home is taken. When those things happen, you come to civil court. When you lose your job because you feel you've been discriminated against because of age or gender, then you come to civil court to have that right protected.
Tell me a little bit about another interesting aspect. There's an issue here that I don't know that a lot of people have considered, and that's how our democracy functions. With these cuts, what happens to our checks and balances system and just the way we operate in a democracy?
That's a great question. And here it really is a civics lesson. As we learned in 8th grade, the judicial branch is a co-equal branch of government with the legislative branch and the executive branch. And we all serve to protect the public and enhance the way of living in our state or in our country. But what we're seeing in California is the judicial branch has been cut 24%. It's been cut every year, 5 years in a row. And so what you're seeing is the judicial branch is becoming marginalized. We're not able to perform the full check and balance, hence the civil problem, against the legislature and the executive branch. Mind you, the legislature, they write the laws, they propose the laws, and the governor signs them. But what you're seeing is the judicial branch is losing its ability, its predictability, its sustained financing in order to meet the demands for the people who are trying to enforce the very rights that the legislature and the governor have given them.
So in a sense, you've kind of, average Californian could lose their right or their ability to fight for things, fight for themselves and what they believe in the court of law. And it could, in a sense, compromise our democracy.
Most definitely. I am most reminded of Judge Learned Hand's quote, who said, "If we are to keep our democracy, thou shalt have one commandment, and that is we must not ration justice." And for me, those words are echoing more and more in California with what's happening with the judicial branch.
Can these courts, can these budget cuts be saved at this point? Is it too late, or are we still in the proposed budget state, and therefore there might be a way to salvage it?
This is the governor's proposed budget in May, and now it has gone to the legislature, and the legislature will look at that budget and make and negotiate and propose changes to it. So it isn't finished. The governor hasn't signed this budget. The legislature hasn't approved it, but it is the opening volley into negotiations for a final budget that has to be signed by July 15.
Anything else where you can see across the state the status of the courts? Will it be the local small appellate court or the large Supreme Court? Those kind. Give us just kind of a spectrum of the type of courts that are going to be impacted.
All courts across the state of California, trial court, appellate court, and the Supreme Court are being affected. We are in our 5th year of cut. We've cut and cut and cut. I would also point out that the greatest cut this falls upon, to me, are the people of California, the people who come to court. It falls upon the most vulnerable, the people who come to court who cannot afford an attorney, who take a day off of work, if they have work, use fixed income to take transportation, to get to the court, to stand in line at the self-help desk, only to find out that the self-help desk is closing today at 2 instead of 5 because it doesn't have resources, and to find out that that person has to come back the next day to try to get in line earlier so that he or she can get help with their papers so they can get their dissolution, or they don't have to be evicted, or they can get custody of their child, or they can have custody of their child changed. What we're seeing is that lines and lines of people who come to the court for help are being turned away and told to come back another day when the courts are fully operating.
Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakauye, thank you so much for your time and your perspective. It's an interesting topic, and I know we keep hearing about the ramifications of the budget, but we appreciate sharing what's happening on the court side.
Thank you very much for your interest.